Last time, we watched Mr. Jake make the batch of feed. Now it's time for him to take it to the farm. On his way there, he'll pass many houses and farms. The feed truck has large mirrors on the sides to help Jake see what's around him. Jake's drive from the mill to the farm isn't a very long one, but on the way he passes many farms. Take a look. Can you see any animals or farm equipment? Some of the fields you see may be used to grow ingredients like the ones Jake used to make the feed for the cows. The farms could be growing soybeans, corn, alfalfa, triticale, or barley. As Jake gets closer to the farm, the road changes from a paved road to a gravel road. We know we're almost there. You won't see very many houses on this part of the road because many of them are spaced far apart. That is because most of this land is used for farms. There are several dairy farms right near Jake's farm. Watch closely, and you may see some guinea hens and some cows. These cows belong to a dairy farm, but not Jake's. We're almost there. There it is, Jake's family's dairy farm. Now, Jake will turn onto the farm and drive the feed truck over to where he can unload the feed. The large white structure we are driving past is the dairy barn. That is where the cows live that are being milked. Jake is headed for the feed kitchen. There's still more mixing to do once he drops off his load. To empty the feed truck, Jake uses controls on the back of the truck to move the auger. Remember, an auger is like a screw that turns to push the feed. Notice how the auger moves from its position on the side of the truck into the feed kitchen. You can see that there is an empty space on the floor between the two large piles. Jake needs to move the feed truck forward so that the auger will drop the load from his truck right into that empty space. He turns the auger on, and the feed mixture begins to pour out onto the floor. The feed truck has 5 bins, so Jake opens up the 3 that contain the food. Using a large shovel, Jake moves some of the other ingredients to make sure they don't get mixed. Not yet, anyways. The pile is getting much bigger, so the feed truck will be empty very soon. The auger pushes the last of the truck's contents onto the pile. Now that the feed truck is empty, Jake backs up the feed truck so that he can put the auger away without damaging it. Inside the feed kitchen, there are 4 piles. Each pile is an ingredient that will be mixed together to make the complete feed ration for the dairy cows. Remember, before we talked about how the correct measurements are needed to keep the cows healthy and producing quality milk. The feed crane, which looks like a claw, moves along a track to each pile. It is controlled by a computer that gives it the recipe to follow. Once it is above an ingredient, it uses a laser to see how large the pile is, so it knows how far it needs to go down to grab a specific amount of ingredients. Once the size of the pile is known, the feed crane reaches down and scoops up the first ingredient. It will measure the weight of what it picks up in the claw. If it is close to the correct amount, it will move it back to the mixer and drop it in. If it is too much or too little, it will dump it back out onto the pile and try again. With the correct amount inside, it moves back along the track toward the mixer. It opens up and drops the ingredient into the mixer. Arms inside the claw scrape the edges to make sure all of the weighed ingredient is emptied out. Now it moves along the track again to collect another ingredient, following all of the same steps as it did with the first. The final ingredient is measured and dumped into the mixer. It's almost time to feed the cows. The mixer where the ingredients were dumped is also the vehicle that will deliver the complete feed ration to the cows. This robot feeder moves slowly along its track toward the dairy barn. If you look on the ground near the robot feeder, you'll see a metal track. This is the track that the feeder follows. In the field behind the robot feeder, you can see alfalfa that has just been cut. It will be chopped and placed into the silo to make silage for the cows. Silage is one of the ingredients that was added to the mixer. The robot feeder will turn the corner and head closer to the dairy barn. We've watched Mr. Jake unload soybeans at the mill, roast them in the roaster, mix and measure ingredients at the mill to make a batch of feed. Then he loaded it onto the feed truck. After that, he took the batch, drove it to the farm where he unloaded it into the feed kitchen. The feed crane measured more ingredients and mixed them together in the robot feeder. Finally, the robot feeder will enter the barn and feed the cows. The cows inside the dairy barn are a mixture of Holstein, red Holstein, and brown Swiss. When the robot feeder arrives, the door automatically opens up to allow the robot feeder to enter the barn. You can see the cows starting to move closer to the robot feeder. They know that their meal has arrived. As the feeder continues to move along its track inside the dairy barn, it drops small piles of food for the cows to eat. The robot feeder will drop food all along this side of the barn and then turn and go down the other before returning to its place in the feed kitchen. Enjoy your meal, ladies!